Hi everyone, my name is Andrew Oliu. I'm recording this video from my Brooklyn, New York apartment, which has doubled as my home office for the past 7 or 8 months of the pandemic. I'm a 2012 WVU MIS alumni and was asked to speak to you all briefly about uh, my education at West Virginia and how the MIS program helped prepare me for my career. A little bit briefly about me. I started working part-time when I was a junior, I think second semester, and have held a number of different roles and responsibilities since then. I've done business and data analysis, project management, development. I've led a team of developers. I was an application owner for a little while, and recently I've been doing a lot more in the strategy and planning space. Shortly after I graduated, I learned very quickly that the tangible and quantitative skills that I thought were important, along with things like your SAT, ACT, and GPA, it turns out they're not nearly as important as some of the softer skills, such as being able to lead meetings, being able to lead others, task management, and even writing an effective email or an effective presentation. This is incredibly important because everyone in your class, along with countless other students across the country, will have the same tangible skill set, but it's the soft skills that can and will set you apart from others. So why do I bring this up and how could it possibly relate to my education? I looked quickly on West Virginia's website about the MIS program, and it describes it in part as appealing to students who enjoy working with computers and problem solving. This resonates with me because a common theme among all of the roles that I've held is that they required effective problem-solving skills. I spend more time finding and talking to people, brainstorming with those individuals, and documenting those discussions as a means to solve problems, more so than maybe anything else I do on a daily basis. And sure enough, the MIS program at West Virginia really helped prepare me for this. Some of the things that I think were most important that I learned or began to learn in school was very plainly how to think and how to be resourceful. So what do I mean about how to think? Each of you is learning what I would consider to be a foundation for what you need to know and understand to do MIS. But if it's not obvious to you, there's not always going to be a single correct answer for the problems that you face, especially in corporate America. There could be dozens of correct answers, and you might have to sell one or two of those answers. I learned this through some of my programming classes. I used to dread taking some of those exams because I frankly wasn't a good developer, but if I was able to understand the problem well enough, I could articulate a working solution because I knew just enough of the programming language I was being tested on. I never wrote the cleanest code. It was most likely the least efficient or one of the most inefficient code bases in class, but it worked, and that's what mattered. MIS, and especially the work that I've done in my professional career, is far more about understanding a problem and translating that problem into technical terms and requirements. And I use that ability in my job on a daily basis, if I had to guess. The actual programming and provisioning of a solution I leave to people that are actually good developers. The second lesson of being resourceful is a little bit more of a gray area, but incredibly important as well. It could be anything from networking to using Stack Overflow. I admit in interviews that I use Stack Overflow. I have SQL as a skill set on my resume, and if I'm asked how good I am, I say good enough to know how to use Stack Overflow. And it works. In order to be successful in your respective careers, you're going to need to be able to solve problems with little to no support. As an example, there might be very little background information, or you could be looking at a problem in a very old computer system. Some companies out there still use mainframes, believe it or not. Other problems I've faced, can't find the right documentation, or the documentation I have is not up to date, or maybe there's a subject matter expert who's no longer with the company. So how and where do you begin? In my job, I have to build relationships, and some of the people that I work with are people like system owners, users, the operations or support teams, as well as the reporting teams that use those systems. More often than not, there's some sort of documentation, but it is likely out of date, or maybe I just can't find the right version. So I'm also writing new documentation as I go and have these discussions. But you may be surprised to learn that there are people out there that don't even think to ask simple questions. Something as simple as, "Hi, I have a problem, can you help me with it?" If you have a strong relationship with someone who knows the answer, they are much more likely to help you than they would be if you didn't have a strong relationship with them. I learned to ask those simple questions in my MIS courses, and they've continued to pay dividends today. Each of you should be practicing being resourceful. You probably are, whether or not you realize it, with your studying, but you should also be doing it as you begin to search for a job. I decided to study MIS because of relationships that I built with professors at West Virginia. I shared with them what I was interested in and asked for their recommendation, and MIS was a recurring theme. And it was because of those same professors and the relationships that I built over time that I was fortunate enough to have multiple job offers when I graduated. It wasn't because I was the best student or because I had the highest grades or was the best programmer. And relationships like those have helped me excel in my professional career as well. Not because or just because I was a good worker, but because I did something to help someone in return for them helping me. So going back to the previous example, there's nothing wrong with asking for help or asking for another perspective. And if you've learned nothing else from this video, I cannot stress enough, don't be afraid to speak up. You have a ton of connections that you can leverage, such as your family and friends, your professors, most of which have really valuable real-world experience. You can reach out to alumni such as myself and get our perspective, especially as it relates to what you're learning. Some of us might even be able to help you get a job out of school. And it's my personal belief that you're going to learn a lot more and a lot faster from those experiences and perspectives than you would if you simply stuck with a textbook. So speak up and ask questions, think outside the box, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo would be my recommendation. If any of you are interested in connecting and speaking further, Vince has my information. You can also look me up on LinkedIn. I wish you all the best, stay safe, and let's go Mountaineers.